They can't rationalize me having a different philosophical perspective, so they resort to calling me a zoophile. Long story short, someone asked me about my opinion on bestiality in a live stream, and I said that some forms of bestiality aren't any worse than what everyone funds through industries like meat and horse racing. This wouldn't be much of a controversy if I wasn't also open about being a furry, but since I am, now a bunch of idiots call me a zoophile, as if my opinion on this issue is some sort of evidence that I'm attracted to real animals. I'm not. It's a complex issue, and I don't believe everything is black and white, but at the end of the day it's just people intentionally misrepresenting me because I have an opinion that they don't like. I don't think anyone should be fucking animals, but I do consider it to be hypocritical to throw people in jail for specific scenarios where no measurable physical or psychological distress was inflicted on the animal, especially when 99% of us already fund actual bestiality with undeniable measurable distress being inflicted on animals through those aforementioned industries. Nobody gave a shit when Tom Green and Steve-O jerked off horses for comedy. Just seems like a bunch of dishonest virtue signaling when people only give a shit if the person performing the act is doing it for their own sexual gratification. If the experience of the animal isn't considered when determining whether the act was abusive towards the animal, then it's not really about the animal at all, is it? If you think I'm an idiot for having this perspective, then great, but to call me a zoophile because of it is just intellectually lazy and dishonest. I do not believe that animals are capable of informed consent like human beings are. The philosophical question is whether or not meaningful consent from the animal's perspective would require more than the dictionary definition of consent. If animals require informed consent for a sexual act not to be inherently abusive, then that would mean that animals cannot consent to each other either. I seriously don't believe that the people arguing against my position believe that two animals engaging in sexual activity are automatically both raping each other, because neither of them are capable of informed consent. It obviously makes sense to apply that standard to humans, but informed consent isn't something that literally any non-human animal on the planet has ever experienced regardless of human interaction. To arbitrarily apply that logic to non-human animals would be to suggest that literally every single sexual interaction between any two animals on the planet is automatically rape for both parties. It just doesn't make sense logically to me. I've never suggested that people should be fucking animals, and I think it's gross. However, it does seem silly to be throwing people in jail for specific scenarios where there is no measurable physical or psychological distress on the animal. An example would be like when Steve-O and Johnny Knoxville jerked off a horse so that Chris Pontius could drink its semen for comedy. If people seriously believed that every sexual interaction between humans and animals was automatically abusive, then people would be campaigning for the Jackass crew to face jail time over that stunt. Nobody seems to care so long as the human being isn't being sexually gratified by the action, so it all ends up looking like a bunch of dishonest and opportunistic virtue signaling to me. Whether you disagree with my perspective or not, it's all just moral philosophy. I don't believe I've done anything wrong here by simply just having a different opinion than most on the subject.
Have I seen iDubbbz's video and or Critical's video on iDubbbz? Yes, of course. And I tweeted about it with a meme saying like, iDubbbz controversy in a nutshell. And it was literally that like pretty hilarious like the myth of consent meme where it's like Jesus in the background saying, I don't. Even though there's like two people that are saying, I consent, and then Jesus is like, I don't. Because I feel like that sums it up pretty well. Is like, okay, well, so what if these two people are doing things in their relationship that don't involve you that you disagree with? Like, how's that a controversy, right? And then after I posted that, some people, well, one person, responded to my tweet by editing the image and then throwing one being like, I consent and it's me, and then editing the other one with a dog saying, I don't. And then that took off, I guess. And now there's a bunch of people being like, I just witnessed a murder, as if that was like any kind of... First of all, my opinions on completely unrelated issues don't delegitimize my opinion on the iDubbbz controversy, right? Like, those two are completely unrelated things, so you can't just say, like, well, look at this opinion that he has that you might disagree with. That means he's wrong about everything. And then second, it's just, like, it's so annoying that, like, there continues to be a chunk of people that are unwilling to actually address my actual arguments. They have to, like, summarize it. You know how, like, Kimba and the Lion King? Like, you can only compare the two things if you boil them down to a single sentence. It's literally just like that, where, like, you can only really take issue with what I said if you, like, summarize it to the point where it's no longer my argument, right? And that's kind of annoying, because when people spread that kind of shit about me, they're not replicating my argument in any kind of, like, faithful way. They're really not. Like, And if you have to change my argument into something that it wasn't in the beginning in order to actually make people upset about it, then you don't really have much of an argument to begin with. Well, I started talking about the iDubbbz thing, and then apparently I pissed so many people off with that iDubbbz take that, like, people just shouldn't fucking care if what he does with his girlfriend. Apparently I pissed a group of people off enough that they're back to claiming that I have sex with animals again. Which only ever comes up if people are mad at me about something completely unrelated. As soon as I review a really popular, well-loved movie, and I say it's like, it was alright, it wasn't great, that's when those things start coming back. Quite literally like clockwork. Nothing that I said about this issue was unfactual. Like, if you disagree with reality, then okay, don't get mad at me for it. Some people are just fucking hysterical. And I don't think they understand what life is like outside of Twitter. Whenever you see some, like, really, like, batshit insane hysterical person on Twitter, just click on their profile and see if you can even find the tweet that you just saw. Because those types of people are tweeting, like, 8 times an hour, and it's, like, so exhausting. It's like, holy shit. You really don't do anything else. And Twitter is, like, literally just the platform for virtue signaling, so of course people are gonna go like, I'm moral, did you see this thing that someone else said? Well, I'm more moral than them because I very clearly disagree with that. Well, you know, obviously the character limit and just honestly the character limit and the tone of the conversations, and I guess, like, the algorithms themselves don't really allow for any kind of, like, thoughtful conversation on complicated issues, you know? It's just easier to summarize someone's opinion in a way that completely misses the point of what they were originally saying. It's easier to do that and go like, look at how moral I am. I am totally not virtue signaling right now. It's like, I don't know. You go to some of those, like, Twitter threads of the ones being like, you must never forget that this man said that said that people shouldn't go to jail for having sex with animals, and then they leave out the part where I said, well, only if it's if there's literally no measurable harm or distress placed on the animal, which would make it literally less harmful than the entire farming industry, the entire breeding industry, right? Things that people are already okay with. But no, of course, you don't apply that same logic to people in those industries. You don't go to people who are, like, farmers or have ever been to, like, a horse race. So much more abusive than the examples I'm talking about. You don't apply that same level of criticism to them. I think you're full of shit. I think these people are so full of shit. It's so frustrating. It's like every like detail about the argument that I made that makes the argument accurate is always left out. I wouldn't say I'm getting harassed over it. They're just people memeing about it, and it's just kind of annoying because it's like, I don't know, like, I never really talk about it unless other people are. Like, even in that original stream that was clipped, I only was saying any of those things because somebody asked me my perspective on the issue. Little did I know that people are fucking insane and would interpret the most uncharitable version of my argument possible. Little did I know that on my stream to, like, 50 people at the time, that it would get clipped, and the argument that I was making, that was literally just me ranting on a drunken Sunday stream, would from then on be solidified as my, like, entire thesis on the issue, which is just not true. Like, there's obviously tons that are a part of my argument that's not in that video. But of course, you know, if I'm talking like this and I make these kinds of points on stream, which I've done several times at this point, these ones don't get clipped. These ones don't get clipped because they don't support the narrative of someone trying to convince people that that I'm, like, an animal abuser or something, right? They don't support that narrative, so these ones don't get clipped. And you like, go into these Twitter threads, And there's people being like, man, I feel sorry for his cats. I don't own cats. I don't own any animals. And then people like those comments and retweet them, and it's just like, what the fuck is going on? Like, nobody knows how to do any research. Nobody knows what the fuck they're talking about. It's so frustrating. It's like literally just the most basic thing to look up, and nobody bothers. Like, I live my life very publicly. It wouldn't be that difficult to figure out. Yeah, and then there was somebody in that Twitter thread saying something like, or one of these Twitter threads, there were like 2 within 2 days. One of these Twitter threads saying something like, oh, let's see if I can find it. I really don't know what the fuck they were talking about. Because I need to read this because I still don't even fucking understand it. Almost there. Yeah. Responding in this Twitter thread with 24 likes. If I remember correctly, while watching one of his editing streams, and someone posted a little girl holding a lizard, and he talked about it being weird and borderline. Also, his Discord is a fucking mess, lol. 24 likes, and the original poster of this Twitter thread said, a girl just having a pet lizard is too much? Oh my god, 34 likes. And I don't know what they're even saying. What do they mean by that? What do you mean borderline? Borderline what? Like sexual for the lizard or for the little girl? Or like inappropriate? Or like where was this? I don't know what they're talking about. Someone posted a little girl holding a lizard and he talked about it being weird and borderline. I don't know what you're talking. What does that mean? What does that even mean? Like, I don't fucking know what you're talking about. It's bad enough that I'm the subject of this conversation. But, like, even if I wasn't, I would have no... Why do those have likes? What is that saying, though? Like, what is that implying? I don't even know what they're talking about. Borderline what? And I love when people shit on other people in those kinds of threads, and they start out with, if I remember correctly. Like, they're totally fine just throwing something into the void when they're already admitting, like, they have no fucking idea what they're talking about. They're like, I don't really know, but this probably happened. What?
When you start attacking the person instead of the argument, it's because you've lost the argument.
Well, yeah, that's usually how it goes, Beta Fasta. Like, when I do engage with these people, every once in a while, they'll show up on my subreddit and start another, like, big debate about it. And literally every single time, like clockwork, every single fucking time, they've just went in circular logic mode until the point where they just start calling me slurs or saying, like, why don't you fuck a horse? And it's like, well, okay, I don't think your argument really holds much weight at that point. Like, if that's all you're resorting to and you can't even, like, back up what you're trying to say, like... Oh shit, I didn't even do the noise removal yet. I can't put that in yet.
At least the good majority of your fans see through this bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, like, my, the people that actually are fans enough to be on my subreddit, like, people try to post it there still every once in a while. And they're expecting some sort of, like, rallying cry, virtuous, like, I'm going to convince this person this person's fans to be against him because what he has said is just so wrong, so morally incorrect, and I am morally superior, and we can all feel moral by banishing this person. Like, and they show up there, and then once people start downvoting them, because people have already heard this a billion times and are sick of it, and they don't care. They don't care because, like, the people making these arguments don't even understand the argument that I made. So, yeah, as soon as that starts happening, they're like, oh no, you guys all suck. It's really weird. But yeah, you look in these threads and there's, like, legitimately people saying shit, like, unironically saying, like, I can't believe he's allowed to continue like this after this has already been made public. I can't believe he's allowed to keep posting on YouTube. It's like, what is my crime here? What do you think my crime is? I'm challenging your worldview? Like, what do you mean? It's so fucking ridiculous. Like, they unironically say that. They're like, I'm so mad. They literally, one of the comments I was reading earlier today, I'm so mad that other YouTubers that I like continue to work with him. What do you think I've done? I have an opinion you don't like? You have your feelings hurt because it's an issue that arises a lot of emotion in you, and you don't even once stop and think to reflect about why you're possibly so emotional about this issue? Fuck off. So stupid. Yeah, see, here's the fucking problem. Is like when I made that first stream, I had no idea that I would literally have to flat out say, like, by the way, I am not saying that people should be going out and fucking animals. By the way, I am not making a suggestion for people to fuck animals. By the way, I do not condone animal abuse. I didn't realize I would have to say that because I didn't realize people are so fucking insane. I had no idea people would jump to that conclusion. When I think about myself as a person just making an argument, and on that stream I've made tons of other arguments about equally controversial subjects, but apparently those ones don't get clipped because it has nothing to do with me being a furry, I guess. Like, I don't think about those things in that way. I never thought, like, oh yeah, I should spend an extra half an hour clarifying my position to people because otherwise they're going to think that I fuck animals or something because I'm a furry. I didn't think that because I don't think of myself that way. Like, I was naive enough to not be expecting other people to interpret what I was saying in the most uncharitable way they possibly could. What stream am I talking about? Just search up like, your movie sucks on bestiality. That's the name of the clip that people clipped. And it's like literally just me and one of my like drunken Sunday streams. And I go on a bit of a rant because the people in the comments section were being stupid. And they were saying a bunch of like actually retarded shit. But of course in that video you can't see what the Twitch commenters were saying. But yeah, I mean, like, the problem is, like, it is possible to watch that video and interpret what I've said in the most uncharitable way possible. And there's a lot of people that just hate furries and they want to, like, make the connection between furries and bestiality and say, like, oh yeah, well, obviously because he's a furry, you know, then that means he wants to do this. There are those types of people. There are also people that hate me for things that I've said about certain movies. There are people that hate me for my personality, and they all congregate around this single material. Because in terms of, like, my character, there's really, like, not much else that they can use against me, right? And there are people that, like, really, really want to believe that I'm a bad person. And so this is as close as they get. You know, I'm not like taking advantage of people. I'm not like abusing anybody. I'm not like being a massive asshole to people or like stealing money or anything. It's literally just, oh, this guy has an opinion on something and I disagree with that opinion. And I'm going to get very emotional about this person's opinion and try to present it in a way where I can connect the dots and it's no longer just an opinion. No, this is actual abuse from his words, right? So, yeah, that's what people do, and it's a little frustrating. But,
you know,
and yeah, if you watch that video and you've never seen it before, first of all, I didn't say anything untrue in that video. I didn't say anything factually inaccurate. And although my tone came off as like kind of whiny, right? Like that would be the only real issue I have with that. Other than the fact that like I didn't clarify my position enough for people, supposedly. Here, I'll post some links in the chat, actually. Because I actually have clarified my position on this a billion times. There are 2 screen caps of comments that I've made that I feel summarize my perspective well enough that even if people watch those other things, or even if people look at other comments I've made, these comments in particular that I've made pretty much clear everything up, in the sense where, like, no, I didn't backtrack. I didn't, like, rewrite anything I said, but I clarified them. So here's one, and then here's another. So, like, literally, no matter what type of issue that people take with the things I've said, I think it's pretty well summarized in that, so that if people see those two images, those two screen caps of comments, it pretty much just shuts the argument down. Like, oh, like, okay, that's clearly what he means, right? So, if any of you happen to see people completely misrepresenting what I'm saying, or coming out of what I've said with a completely inaccurate conclusion of what I've actually said or what I've actually meant, feel free to share those two images, because I feel like those clear it up. Pretty much anywhere that I've posted those winds up resulting in downvoting the person that I'm responding to. Like, those are the two images where as soon as I post them, people are like, oh, okay, it's clear that this is what he means, and the person that was trying to make it seem like something else is either just dishonest or stupid. So
I may not agree with you, but I respect your opinion.
yeah, see, that's the fucking crazy thing. Suck my deck. Is like, I don't see anything about this particular conversation that can't reasonably just result in people having that exact same thing. I can't honestly understand why other people can't just be like, hey, I may not agree with you, but I respect your opinion. Even if you don't respect my opinion, like, how on earth is that justification for people saying that I should, like, literally be canceled over literally a differing philosophical perspective? That's literally what it is. It is moral philosophy, okay? Like, how fucking immature are people that as soon as someone challenges their worldview, rather than actually reflecting and thinking about it and being like, why does this person believe this? Maybe I should do some research. Or I want to hear this person clarify what they're saying. Perhaps maybe I'm not interpreting it correctly if I'm getting so emotionally upset over what they've said. No, nobody does that. Well, not enough people do that anyway. But yeah, it's just so annoying.
It's also a straight-up game of internet telephone. This shit has led to people telling me you suck off dogs, and they say it like a fact.
Yeah, Salamancer. It's so stupid. It's just like, the ultimate irony in this is that these same people, like, the entire concept of rallying against me for this position, the entire concept of doing that is to basically say, hey, we are the arbiters of morality. That is clearly immoral, and we all need to band together to reassure ourselves of what morality is. We are moral, he is not. Let's all agree on that. Let's, be angry about it or whatever, right? It's coming from a moral superiority kind of perspective, right? The ultimate irony in that is that I believe it's incredibly immoral to completely write someone off as a person entirely based off of a philosophical disagreement. Like, would that not also constitute these same people applying that to themselves for doing that? Like, there are some people legitimately that think that I shouldn't be able to pursue my passions, that I shouldn't have an audience because they disagree with me on a moral philosophical issue. Like, that's not moral. That's incredibly immoral. It's so fucking stupid. Like, a lot of these people are just fucking awful. Like, holy shit. Like, go outside or something. Like, the world is not Twitter. Well, yeah, of course. Like, if the problem is, like, if people are just spreading, like, completely reductive versions of what I've actually said, then, like, there's a lot of people that think they disagree with me when they actually don't. And if they just listen to those clarifications that I've made, They'd be like, oh yeah, well, that's actually a good point. I've mentioned this before. It's fucking insane. It's so hilarious. If you scroll down the comments on the Kenny Hotz interview that I did, basically, I don't know how far you'd have to scroll because I haven't checked those comments in a while. But there's comments there. And I think because like Kenny versus Spenny is kind of like edgy kind of humor show, there's a lot of like haha Nazi humor in it. And I love the show and I love edgy humor. I love all that shit. But it does kind of attract like a certain kind of like drama oriented audience, let's say. And so people came across that interview and they were saying things in the comments like, man, if only, I wonder if Kenny knew that he was talking to someone that thinks bestiality is okay. How could he even talk to him? There are several comments like this. And like, it is the most ridiculous mental gymnastics in the world, because if you're a fan of Kenny versus Spenny, then you would know that those two have literally performed acts of bestiality on the show. In that interview, Kenny Hotz literally says, literally calls it bestiality in that interview too. And so it's like, wait, you're a fan of Kenny Hotz, a man who has actually performed bestiality, and you're shitting on me because I've made the argument that you're a hypocrite? That's ridiculous. Like, you have no principles, you have no morals, you have no moral consistency is what I should say. It's just so much fucking mental gymnastics. Which is why people have to argue against strawman versions of my position rather than the actual position itself.
Adam, I saw Love on a Leash because I saw you rated it 10. Great recommendation.
I rated that movie a 10 out of 10 because Ralph said to do it on his channel. That was kind of a meme that actually got him banned from IMDb. He reviewed that shitty movie, and he was like, everybody go support women filmmakers. This movie is directed by a woman. Let's all rate it 10 out of 10. And then everybody did, even though it's like the worst movie ever. And then Ralph got his IMDb account banned because of it. Oh yeah, and like, I don't know, I don't really recognize your username in this comments section, the person that mentioned Love on a Leash. I don't know if you're just, I don't know if that was supposed to be like a nudge nudge sort of thing, but there are literally people in forums that were like, he rated Love on a Leash a 10 out of 10. That means he fucks dogs. It's like, okay, well, you clearly didn't see Ralph's video. Like, literally just like a couple clicks away from like not making an ass out of yourself, just a couple clicks away from like not saying something completely inaccurate. Yeah, but I guess people don't really give a shit.
Adjustment.
Not just like Jackass and Tom Green and like Kenny versus Spenny. Like those are like those were seen by millions of people. Those were seen by millions of people, and not one person watched those people perform acts of bestiality on those animals and thought like, man, that animal's being abused. Not one fucking, well, maybe a couple people thought that. But like, the problem, if it was under a different context, if those people were like getting off on it and doing literally the exact same thing, then people would have their perspective completely changed. And that's the point that I'm making, is that people don't base their opinions on the matter based on the experience of the animal. They base it on the experience of the human being, and that in of itself means that it's not really about the animal at all, right? That's what I take issue with. I just think it should be more morally consistent. Like, if it's not okay for someone who's getting off on it to do it, then it shouldn't be okay for someone who's not getting off on it to do it. But nobody gives a shit about the people not getting off when they do it. Debate destiny on it? Of course, but it wouldn't be much of a debate because he agrees with me on that. Have you ever seen the clips of him talking about the exact same shit? Of course you haven't, because he's not a furry, so people don't share those around the internet. Like, he has the exact same opinion. In fact, his is even less, what's the word? If people are going to come at me pretending as if there's anything malicious about my perspective on it, I would say that applies more to Destiny than me, because his response is literally just like, yeah, fuck animals, they're less species, rape them, whatever. I could shoot up a room full of cats and not feel anything about it if I didn't get caught. That's his opinion on it, so I don't know how much of a debate we'd actually have. I'm not even as far as he is on that subject, I don't think.
I can't remember exactly which episode, but when TJ Kirk was still on Drunken Peasants, he said something kinda similar to what you said. There wasn't a whole lot of backlash.
Oh yeah, TJ said it before. He said that way before Drunken Peasants too. That didn't get clipped because he's not a furry, right? It's literally just people trying to connect the dots. There's so many people that have the exact same opinion as I do on this issue, but unfortunately, the atmosphere of places like Twitter, they're less likely to jump in and defend me, because if the entire thread is going to be like, fuck this guy, I wish he would die, blah, 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 then you're automatically saying like, hey, anyone with this opinion, don't speak up. Don't defend anybody here. Like, we are irrational. We are hysterical. So it's such a non-issue. I can't imagine being that type of person. It's like this moral philosophical disagreement that I have with someone justifies me wanting them to be miserable. Like, what do you mean? So ridiculous. All right, so I'm going to get to editing. Before I do, I'm going to post those 2 links again one more time. Because I do... If you guys think that this is like as bullshitty as I do, these are the 2 links to post to say, hey guys, he's actually clarified this about 1 billion times, and you're not presenting his argument accurately. And every time I posted these 2 links, it's shut people up right away. So there's one, and there's the other. So hang on to those links and use them if you need to, because like the only reason I get shit from people is because they share the bits that are the easiest to take uncharitably, and they don't share the very reasonable clarifications that I've made, where it's, you know, those 2 images, it's impossible to interpret what I've said in the most uncharitable way possible. And I've specifically worded myself in those to make sure that what I'm saying is clear and to clear up the misconceptions that people would have. So if you see anybody saying stupid shit, that means that either they haven't seen those clarifications, or that they have and they're just purposefully omitting them to make me look bad. Then just post those, honestly. Just post 2 of those being like, hey, this is what he's actually said. The problem there is that there's enough people out there that as soon as they hear bestiality and they know that the guy's a furry, they already think the dots are so close anyway that they don't care. They don't care, and they're willing to connect it regardless of there not being any actual evidence for that sort of thing. So it really doesn't take much for people to want to make that kind of connection. So that's, I guess, the problem. And that's, I guess, where I was naive in terms of not expecting people to think that way. Am I against eating meat from factory farms? I mean, like, it's so socially acceptable that it would be a weird position to take. Like, I'm not full vegan, but you don't have to scroll back too far on my Twitter timeline to see that I eat a lot of meat substitutes. So I don't eat burgers, I eat Beyond Burger. I think like maybe 4 days ago, you could see that picture I took of that nut cheese stuff, which is like vegan cheese. You scroll back even further on my timeline, you can see the Beyond Meatballs I made. So like, I don't know, I'm conscious of it, but it's less out of a morality for animals sort of thing, and it's more out of like an environment thing. Because in terms of my own perspective, if we're talking about like the suffering of animals in that sort of way, like I'm kind of like a determinist in ways, and I don't really let a lot of things get to me in terms of like that kind of a moral conversation. Like, how can I describe this? So like, I kill a mosquito, right? That was like a living being that I've killed. You set up mouse traps. That's a step further, right? That's another living being that you've killed. And not all mouse traps are ethical. But it's like the difference between like an ethical mousetrap and an unethical mousetrap. Do you really notice it? Does that really influence the world? It can make you feel better. It can make an individual feel better about themselves, but it doesn't really do anything in terms of like the grand scheme of the universe. So with my philosophy in terms of eating meat, I am completely conscious about it, and I eat, even though I'm not vegan or vegetarian, I eat less meat than anybody else I know that's also not vegan or vegetarian. Hence all those meat substitutes that I have. I even have like fake fish. But I don't think that there is that strong of a moral argument to make against meat consumption from the perspective of like animal abuse, because we are also animals and nature is cruel. So like carnivores, lions, tigers, whatever, they kill animals in probably less humane ways than people do in some cases, depending on how it's done. Human beings eating animals, the issue isn't so much with the I guess the methods in which it is done, or like the moral argument against like taking another life. It isn't so much with that. I would argue that there's a bigger problem in terms of like the environmental impact. Does that make sense? Yeah, you think the mouse notices it. Yeah, but that doesn't, like, we only understand our own perspective. We like, it makes sense for human beings to be like cooperative with each other. And I don't, if there's a situation where it's like abuse an animal or don't, I would say don't. Like, I'm not a person that will go out of my way to, like, I'm not a person that will buy the more torturous mousetrap. I'll usually take the more humane one. If I see a bug in my room, I don't squish it. I grab a paper towel and I throw the paper towel outside with the bug in it in a way that it can still, like, escape the paper towel. I'm just like, okay, you deal with your shit outside. I don't want you in here, sort of thing. Like, I don't kill it. But, like, I guess there's a difference between what I do in my own life to make myself feel better versus like the actual moral arguments. Because when I look at morality and I look at moral philosophy from like an argumentative, what is that? I don't know why I can't think of the right word. If I look at moral philosophy from an argumentative perspective, I think that's what I meant. I don't consider everything to be black and white. And I think that morality is made up of individuals with biases deciding what that is. Like, the idea of morality, what is moral, what is immoral, has changed so much over the course of X amount of years, right? Like, it used to be completely moral to fuck a 13-year-old, and now it's not. That's like an evolution of our morals. It used to be completely moral to hang gay people, and now it's not. That's an evolution of our morals, right? So I think that even though I can say from a personal perspective that I would consider something to be immoral, right? Like, I'm not going to crush a bug. I'm going to let it outside. I'm not going to buy the more torturous mousetrap. I can say that for myself, but it's really difficult to paint a broad picture over morality for everyone else to follow, because it is entirely subjective and it's made up of people's experiences. And like I said, I'm a determinist, right? So like, people grow up with the God that they were introduced to in their own culture, right? It just so happens that everybody believes that they believe in the right God, and that everybody happened to follow the God that was specific to their culture and their location, right? So, yeah, I try not to make like blanket statements on morals, is what I'm saying. Does that make sense? Which, you know, in the same perspective, right? If I'm going to be a person that's like Okay, I'm not going to kill the bug. I'm going to let it outside. I'm not going to buy the more torturous mousetrap. That's for me. Like, that's just so I feel better about myself, because I don't like suffering in the world, whether it's like an animal or human being. However, when it comes to like the meat industry, it's like it's so commonplace and it's so engraved in our culture that it would be weird to you can't treat other people like they're Satan, like they're actual murderers for doing something that is literally just a social norm. Right? And that's what eating meat is. Like, it would be really weird to vilify people for that. Even though, yeah, technically it's murder, and technically they're causing an animal to suffer for no better reason than just because it tastes good. But yeah, I mean, like, I can have my own set of standards and practices, I guess, that I follow myself. It would be weird to put that blanket over other people, which is exactly the reason why I have that perspective on bestiality, is because that's literally what people are doing. Is people are going like, well, I think it's totally okay to go to a horse race and pump horses full of steroids and torture them and like literally forcefully impregnate other animals just so that they can have a specific type of breed, like non-consensual pregnancy. People believe that's fine in any case, as long as it's just for breeding, to like literally take wolves and like force breed them into the point where they have like back problems and their eyes are popping out of their skulls like pugs and they can't even fucking breathe. Like, that's fine. And then people come out against some guy that like sucked an animal penis or something. It's like, okay, you're being a fucking hypocrite. That's stupid. Like, that's my point. It's not about like just it's more about moral consistency than anything else. I think people are fucking stupid. Yeah, children can't consent to mutilating themselves. That's pretty fucking sure. I don't like that I'm circumcised. I didn't consent to that. That's fucked up. But it's such a social norm that like how can you treat your friends who decided to have their child circumcised like monsters when they're just doing what is a social norm, right? Yeah, puppy farming's fucked up. It's insanely fucked up. Nobody thinks twice about that shit. If people had the same energy that they have to shitting on me for calling people out on their hypocrisy as they did towards the actual industries and individuals that are actually harming animals that they're supposedly virtue signaling for, then this would be a very different world. But unfortunately, it's just a lot of people that are full of shit, honestly. It's just ridiculous. Anyway. Hope I consider being vegan. It seems like I'm halfway there. Yeah, I'm mostly vegan. I actually like, but here's the other thing. It's like easier for me because I actually like meat substitutes. I actually prefer Beyond Burgers to like regular beef. You know? So I don't know. It's like it's almost like difficult or unfair for me to expect everyone else to follow the same thing when it's a lot easier for me to do it as an individual. It's so funny because like when you look at these kinds of arguments, like when I was first on that stream that got clipped, I didn't bring up horse racing or selective breeding or anything like that because I didn't think I had to. I thought that just by saying like, oh yeah, the meat industry, which everybody knows is fucking torture and we don't need it, right? Aside from like a couple cases, maybe. Like everybody should know that, but apparently nobody knows that. And so a lot of people were like, that's not the same thing. It's like you get sustenance for it, so it's okay. It's like I would love for people to reflect on that kind of statement and apply it to children. So like if you were selling children at McDonald's, is it okay because you're eating them now? Is that okay now all of a sudden? Like, what are you implying here? Yeah, dogs too. Like, people get people share videos on like Reddit of like these dogs in China getting killed or farmed, and they're like, there's this moral outrage, and they post it on the Rage subreddit, and it's like, you do the same shit to cows. You do the same shit to other animals. Like, it's so ridiculous. And I'm not, and again, I should clarify my position because apparently I have to. That doesn't mean that I want dogs to be murdered. I'm pointing out an inconsistency in people's morals and philosophies. That's literally all I've ever been doing. That is not a suggestion to start eating dogs. Holy shit. People are so stupid. Yeah, we probably shouldn't be eating rats and bats for the sake of our own species. Or pangolins? Is that what that was the other one? I'm trying to understand what your sentence is, Wolf's Marksman. I think the issue is on what we do about what we think. If your sentence is structured so weirdly, I'm not even sure what you're saying.
I think he's just saying that people just get outraged about bestiality without he actually caring about the moral issues.
Yeah, well, that's my whole point, is like, it's not even about the animals anymore to these people. It's literally they're... What makes something bestiality to these people, what makes something immoral or animal abuse is based off of, to these people, it's based off of the experience of the human being and not the animal. That's what I take issue with. It's like, if you care so much about animals, why don't you care about the actual animal? It seems like you only care about the experience of the human being. If the human being wasn't getting off on it, you don't give a shit. If the human being is getting off on it, then you do give a shit. That's what I find so stupid about it. Like, Steve-O, Tom Green, Kenny Hotz, Johnny Knoxville, they're all on fucking Twitter, willing to bet $1 million fucking dollars you've never tried to call them out on actually performing sex acts on animals. Seems to me like you don't care as long as they're not getting off on it. Seems to me like you're a fucking hypocrite. Just fucking crickets from this crowd that supposedly cares about animal abuse, right? Nobody cares that Gordon Ramsay serves veal and foie gras in his restaurants, let alone meat in general, but those two particular types that are just extra torturous, nobody gives a shit. It tastes good. These same people aren't going to call him out. Nope. Crickets from everybody. Could you imagine, like, if you took the same device used to make, you know, like foie gras, right? Like, basically, it's like forcefully injecting a duck with like a bunch of shitty fatty food so that it gets a really fatty liver, where they're literally force feeding it with a tube. It's like a life of torture. Imagine if that was someone's fetish. How differently people would react to that. If someone did that to a duck because they were masturbating to it, nobody would be okay with that. But people are okay with it because it tastes good. As long as it's for food, it's fine. It's like, okay. It's absolutely necessary. People are fucking stupid. And again, like, that makes it literally not about the animal at all. You don't give a shit about the animal, you give a shit about the human being's experience. Yeah, the jackass guys literally drank horse cum. They did that. If that is not considered a sexual act on an animal, I don't know what it is. I don't know what is what I meant to say. Yeah, as long as they're laughing about it, the implication to the viewer is like, oh, that's demeaning for them. They don't want to do it, but they're doing it for money, so it's funny. Like, it's an embarrassment for them. Whereas if they literally performed the exact same act, but they had boners and they were jerking off, they'd be in jail. Like, they'd be in jail. But because they didn't have boners and they weren't jerking off while they did it, they're not. And it's like, okay, well, is it about the animal at all? Because I don't think the horse can tell whether or not you're getting off on it. So it's clearly not about the animal anymore. I think people are fucking insane. I also think that there's a significant amount of people who look at... Oops. Sorry. Headphones are plugged into the wrong spot. Who look at furries, and it's something weird that they don't understand. And the only way for them to, like, rationalize what furries are into, or someone with an attraction to, like, anthropomorphized animals, The only way for them to like rationalize it is to come up with some falsity, some falsehood, some imaginative idea of something that is something that they would like, I guess, consider to be more concrete of an understanding. And so they're like, oh, well, they just must be attracted to animals. When that's not at all how sexuality works. And then one of the examples I think of when I think like, okay, like if furries commission furry porn because they secretly are attracted to animals, and it's just a way to be like, okay, well, this is the more socially acceptable version, so I'm going to do this instead. If that were the case, then, like, what animal is Garrus supposed to be? Because I'm really fucking attracted to Garrus from Mass Effect. He's a fucking alien, right? It's very clearly more of, like, a meta-human kind of thing. Like, it's very clearly more of a, like, a human but not quite sort of thing. Like, human with modifications, basically. Like, it doesn't really change whether or not you're attracted to someone's, like, personality or something, right? Like, if I fall in love with a character, I'm literally falling in love with a character. Like, the actual character. Right? I wouldn't be attracted to the design of Scar from The Lion King if he didn't have the same voice or mannerisms or anything like that. Like, it's all still there. In the same way that it would be if you're a human being. But it's really difficult for people to, like, rationalize things that they don't understand. Yeah, honestly, I mean, there's a chunk of people that are pushing that kind of thing because that's what they want to believe, right? So, I mean, you're not going to be able to get through to everybody, but it's worth it to at least post that just to be like, okay, is this person someone who has malicious intent and they're just trying to be an asshole and they're trying to push something that they know isn't true? Or are they someone who's mistaken? And it's worth it to make that post just to figure out whether or not someone is malicious or if they're just stupid or uninformed, right? So I appreciate you posting that because it's 100% worth it to find out the answer. And, you know, there's been a lot of times where I've made that kind of response to people by posting that image or the other one that I shared in chat. There's been a ton of times where I posted those and people have like immediately just apologized and like deleted their shit. So it's worth it to find out. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Looked like she was like smiling. And
some people are literally just like so far gone that either they're mind-blowingly retarded or they just don't care. And the only thing they want to do is just, you know, start shit.
That point, aware that that was the point of the...
I mean, the entire argument's right there. In those two images, in those two links that I shared with you guys, I don't think there's a single criticism that's been thrown at me that isn't addressed in those two images. I don't think that there's a single, like, point of conflict that people bring up that isn't immediately distinguished in those two images. Like, I can't think of another thing that I've said that isn't addressed there, so it might as well just be from those images. Like, you might as well just be sharing those. That's what I do. I have those two on hand right now, so.
That was the point of the movie.
Don't apologize for bringing it back up. No worries. I don't mind at all.
Are there people that actually believe that? He thought it was an inside joke or something.
Yeah, Wolfgang. It's like, this is part of the problem, is that a lot of, like, if someone were to post, like, a meme, let's say in the Sardonicast subreddit, and this has happened before, a meme that implies that I fuck dogs or something, most people will look at that and be like, oh, it's just a meme. No one seriously believes that. But then if you, like, ask them a question about it, if you, like, press them on it, those same people that are posting those memes, they'll immediately just, like, mask off, and they'll be like, yeah, because he's the fucking animals. And it's like, okay. And it's at the point where I don't believe that like anyone's really posting those memes without being one of those people. Because it happens like clockwork every single fucking time. It's to the average person, you think like, oh, of course nobody really believes that. And so you just assume it's a meme. But yeah, the people that post those are like legitimately serious about it, which I would just say downvote those, honestly.
Even if the original tweet was a meme, he made it serious by not clarifying to those misinformed.
Yeah, but that's the thing, Ododaz. The original tweet, you can't just pass off as a meme, because I fucking guarantee you, if you were to ask that person about that, they would be saying the exact same shit as the person that replied to you in that tweet. Guaranteed. Like there's no doubt in my mind that would happen. Like no one posts that kind of thing unless they're like actively trying to promote that sort of conspiracy theory, really. Unless they're actively trying to promote this reductive, oversimplified version of my actual argument in order to persuade other people that I'm somehow some sort of an abuser because I have a different moral, philosophical perspective on an issue. Like,
Destiny goes through this a lot with people calling him a pedo.
Yeah, I also think it's ridiculous to call Destiny a pedo over like his arguments. It's like either people are like so stupid that they don't understand like a philosophical debate. They don't understand like the concept of like getting outside your bubble in your head and trying to think of another perspective that might not be aligning with all of the social norms that exist. Like they don't understand how to do that because they've never done those things in their lives. Either that or they're just literally trying to start shit and they know they're full of shit and they just want drama. Like, but I think there's people from both camps, honestly, in these types of scenarios.
Also, I feel some people are not very self-critical and don't question their own ideals.
Well, yeah, they don't want to... They don't have any investment in believing that they could be mistaken, right? They have one goal, they have one mindset, they want to believe what they believe, and they don't want to be challenged, which is why I'm being criticized in the first place, honestly. It's because I'm challenging a popular belief. I'm challenging a societal norm. By saying, hey, maybe it's a bit fucking hypocritical to be perfectly okay with performing sex acts on animals without a boner, and then get really, really mad if someone does the exact same thing with a boner. It's like, oh no, I've shattered your entire fucking worldview just by pointing out a gigantic hypocrisy, just by pointing out really basic facts that apparently everybody has their head in the sand about. Jesus Christ, people are stupid. I don't want to believe that. It's like, just don't get mad at reality, Jesus Christ.
Facts don't care about your feelings.
Well, yeah, that's exactly my point. Facts don't care about your feelings, and these people are obviously, like, using their emotions in terms of what dictates their worldview, rather than actually trying to be self-critical or reflective or analyzing any bit of any of these issues, right? They're so complex that like you can't summarize it in a tweet, which is why those two images are entire gigantic paragraphs, right? That's the smallest I could possibly summarize my entire perspective on the issue. So
ideas.
Well, it's really fucking ridiculous because you try and have a conversation with someone about this and being like, yeah, the meat industry is literally raping animals. The breeding industry is literally raping animals. Like horse racing, that's literally raping animals. They'll be like, no, it's not. And you have to like explain to them like a 2-year-old what artificial insemination is, and that when an animal gets pregnant for the purpose of like breeding, that they did not consent to that, and you're literally forcing an entire pregnancy on an animal. And it's like, are you like fucking insane? Like,
23 months.
We rape the studs too.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, fucking jerking off an animal to collect its semen and then, like, artificially inseminating another animal. It's like, all right, if someone's doing the same thing, except the only difference is they have a boner, why is that different? That's not different to the animal. If the only deciding factor as to whether or not it's abusive towards the animal is the experience of the human being, and the experience of the animal is not even considered at all, then it's not about the animal. Like, you're fucking stupid. You're insane. I think you're fucking crazy. Like, you're really, really dumb.
Saying it all.
It's just, it's so bizarre. And also at the same time, not surprising. And I think what people don't really understand about this whole situation is, like, you look back, and as I was saying earlier, morality has changed and progressed over time. And we as a culture right now, with all of our history and also our internet, right? We look back at these other cultures, these previous versions of our species, which evolutionary-wise, we haven't changed much at all. In terms of, like, human history, we're, like, a little bit taller. Our brains are not that different, right? Our social structure is not that different. What dictates morality is what is considered taboo, what is considered a social societal norm. And so we look back and think, like, how the hell in the 1950s was everybody against gay marriage? How the hell was sodomy illegal and shit like that? Or like the drug war, which now we're slowly getting out of. Like, people look back at these previous civilizations from, like, 50 years ago, which is not much at all, and think about, like, how the hell were people so stupid back then? They weren't any stupider than right now. They weren't any more stupid than right now. Literally, the only difference was what was considered a social taboo, what was considered a social norm. And the fact is that the majority of people right now are the exact same people that, like, all these people championing for gay rights that are arguing against the same shit that I'm saying, you would have been against gay rights in the 50s. You're that type of person. You're literally that type of person. It's like, it's so stupid. And obviously these two issues are not equatable at all. Like, they're completely different issues. And I understand that if someone were to listen to my statement comparing those two issues, there will automatically be people being like, you just compared this to that, they're not the same. Yeah, of course they're not the same. Nobody said they were the same. What I'm talking about is the mindset. What I'm talking about is people's ability to think outside of what is socially acceptable and be actually critical about the world around them. And the vast majority of people are fucking sheep. The vast, overwhelming majority of people are fucking stupid. And that's, like, you honestly can't say, like, oh yeah, sodomy was illegal because everybody was evil. No, people weren't evil. People were just absorbing what was around them in their culture, like, which is what people are doing today in a variety of social issues, even regardless of the one that I'm currently talking about, right? So, yeah. We're literally, like, evolutionary-wise, not much different, like, at all. For, like, the entire human history, we're, like, basically the same. And people have this idea of, like, people were so stupid back then. No, you're all stupid right now. We're all fucking stupid. And the sooner that you realize that, the sooner you can potentially, maybe, at least be a little bit self-aware about how stupid all of us are right now. And that's why, like, it boils down to the same, like, kind of degeneracy moral arguments. You know, if you don't have, like, some sort of, like, tangible, logical argument against something, and it's literally just based on degeneracy, you know, then what you're really arguing against is sodomy in general. Like, because that's where that started. That's literally what you're arguing against. It's like, oh no, if you can use the same arguments that people used against a woman sucking a man's dick back before that was made legal, then you don't really have much of an argument at all. Like, if the arguments can be applied identically, like, that's not really an argument. And I think it's absolutely fucking hilarious that people look at, like, something like trans acceptance right now, and there are unironic posters that, like, frequent poll or whatever, and they're saying, like, man, the slippery slope, it all started with acceptance of gay people. The boomers were right. We should have listened to Grandpa when he said that accepting gay people would lead down a slippery slope. And I find that argument so hilarious because it didn't start with gay people. It started with sodomy. It started with a woman sucking a man's dick. It started with heterosexual couples being allowed to do something that wasn't vaginal penetration for the sake of procreation. That's where that started. It didn't start with gay people. It didn't start with gay marriage. If you want to argue the slippery slope argument, gay marriage was further down the slope. It didn't start with that. But I love that people try to make that argument. It's so stupid.
Hey guys, not doing a funny end gag this time because I don't find this funny. I find this to be nothing but frustrating. Thanks to my $5 and up patrons. Lemonade Warrior, Razmes, Mechadong, Big Weld from Robots the Animated Movie, Brandon Stupor, Tequila Cinema, and Pit Wang. Next time I see you guys, I hope it'll be with something more comedic and uplifting.